Hey, Dan. Welcome to the Hunt to South podcast. How you doing?
Good. How you guys doing?
Doing good. Finally getting a little bit of rain here. It has, it has been hot and dry here in South Georgia. I don't know what kind of weather you guys are getting up there, but it's been rough down here for a few weeks.
Yeah, it's been kind of hot up here.
Yeah.
Sure, not like you got, but hot for us.
Yeah. Last 2 weeks, Brian? We've been 105 about every day.
It's been pushing triple digits about every day. It's hard to get motivated to get out and put out any trail cameras or anything when you're dealing with those kind of temperatures.
Yeah, I bet.
Now, do you do much in the way of summer scouting, or what do you do this time of year preparing for the upcoming season?
I do a lot of glassing. Up here in Wisconsin, shining is legal. So I do a little shining, locate them with a spotlight. I locate them with binoculars, that kind of stuff. But I'm just starting that now. I mean, they're just starting to get a rack big enough to kind of say, well, okay, that's one I need to keep an eye on. I check on ones that I was after the last couple of years, see if I can make sure they're still around, kind of thing, get that confirmation.
Yeah. Now, do you do much as far as running trail cameras?
I run a few, not as much as what you'd think. They take up so much time and stuff and effort. When I do use them, I put them in like feeding areas and stuff, and for me, they're more to find a target animal. They're not for a hunting spot, because I think you just screw up hunting spots and you chase cameras up in the spots. If I find out a buck's in an area, I don't need a camera.
Right.
Then I just go in there and I let my strategy and my reading the terrain and my scouting kill the deer. The cameras are to locate deer for me.
Right.
It's to find another shooter or to make sure there isn't something bigger than what I'm targeting. Because, like every now and then you run into something that's like really huge and you're like, well, okay, now I'm not going to shoot that other deer,
Yeah. Okay. So you're not diving into bedding areas and putting these cameras, in those types of places. You're more putting them on, I guess, kind of peripheries just to locate a buck. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's an interesting statement, because a lot of guys that see what I'm doing think, holy cow, once they see these bedding areas and stuff and they figure them out, they're like, holy cow, I just put a camera in here, like a cell cam or something, and I'll know when that deer's there. And we went down that route, and what you end up with is those deer are so super sensitive, especially mature bucks in bedding areas, that they do not tolerate a camera there. They notice it. The best we've done is to stick them way up a tree with a big battery pack. But even then, you get pictures of them looking up at it, and they don't bed there. I'd get a lot of pictures when I'd put cameras like that in bedding areas of the deer walking into the bedding area and then staring at the camera. And then it would be like the day after you put the camera there. And then you don't get another picture of him for like 30 days. And then he comes in again, looks at the camera and leaves and doesn't bed. And you start to get the gist that they don't tolerate it. Where a cell cam does work in relationship to bedding as a hunting spot is to put it on the exit route, about where you'd hunt. I mean, you're not going to hunt right in the bedding area.
Right.
You hunt, like 75, 100 yards out of it. Having the camera back there, I mean, it still takes a while to get used to it, but you just let it sit there and just soak, like the whole summer, and then they get used to it. But they don't seem to get used to them when you put them in bedding areas.
Yeah, and I know from watching some of your videos, listening to some of the podcasts, that you hunt both mainly public, but some private as well. So the cameras that you're running in the summer, are those mainly on private land, or are they kind of a mixture of both?
Kind of a mixture of both. I run them all over the place.
Okay. So
another thing that cameras do for me is like get intel. Like I'll put them in a spot where I don't know quite what's going on, and I like try to decipher a spot, because I found that like your best hunting spots have timing. There's like probably a 2-week period of just peak activity in a spot, and sometimes you misread them. And when I put a camera in there for like a season, I'll get a good, capture of what's going on when, and when to be in there,
Yeah.
No,
go ahead,
Robert.
No, go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say, you kind of got me. I'm making both of those mistakes really, or I have along the way, and I still do occasionally. But yeah, I've been guilty of once I started kind of learning about, looking for these bedding areas and stuff, I did go down that road of putting cameras right in the middle of where I thought these bedding areas were. And, so yeah, I've made that mistake and probably need to work on that strategy a little bit for sure.
I think it's a growing thing. It's a natural thing you'd want to do. I mean, you just think you put cameras all over and you see the results, and then you figure out this bedding, and it's like, whoa, wow, I can just throw a camera in there, and you have to do that and see what happens, and then go, oh, okay, that ain't working the same.
Yep. Yeah, I screwed.
So I think everybody kind of does that at first.
Yeah, because I've noticed I'll put a camera in the area, and then I'll go back to check it 3 weeks later, and there'll be a good sized buck on the camera, and I'm like, okay, well, let me hunt this buck, and try to harvest him. But then he was doing it 2 weeks prior, and he's already gone. So it's kind of a double edged sword, because he's there, but it's also prior to when you checked it. If it's not a cell camera, if it's one you actually have to go check.
Yeah, the one thing when cameras really started getting big, the thing that really caught me was I took a whole bunch of cameras and I put them in like staging areas and stuff to see the deer coming out, and on the edges of bedding areas and stuff. And it was overwhelming, the amount of huge bucks I got one picture of. And it was the day I set the camera or the next day, and on a few 3 days after. And then for a month, none of them would get a picture. And it's like, holy cow, something's going on here. Obviously, my pressure was impacting them, because they'd come in like normal at first. They'd hit that camera or your scent or whatever it is, and there'd be pictures of them just glaring at the camera, and then they'd be gone,
Yeah.
And I can think of so many instances where that happened to me, that you start to realize you got to be a little more stealthy around bedding areas. What deer will tolerate around a cornfield, a food plot, or around, funnels is a lot different than what they'll tolerate where they think it's their home. Kind of like a person. I mean, if you lived out in the country and you went outside and you saw a bear in your yard, you might be a little alarmed. You'd be like, oh, wow, there's a bear in the yard. You go in the house, you let him walk, do his business, and leave, and you just forget about him. But if you came home one day and your windows open and the bear tracks come through your living room, you're going to get a little freaked out, aren't you?
Yeah. 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 That's a good analogy there. Yeah. Before we get too far down the road into strategy here, though, can you just give us, and I know, some guys that have listened to you and are very familiar with you have probably heard it, but for those who aren't, maybe just give us a little background on yourself as far as kind of, when and how you developed your passion for hunting.
Okay. So I can't remember a time when I didn't hunt or didn't desire to hunt. I mean, from as far back as I can remember. Most of the people in my family didn't hunt much. I mean, I had some brothers that hunted, but about the time I was growing up, they had gone off to Vietnam, and one of them came back and wouldn't go near a gun again after Vietnam, and one of them came back, moved to the south, and another one moved off, and I was pretty much on my own. My dad didn't hunt. He worked 2 jobs to support us. I mean, he supported hunting and stuff, but it was basically, I was the only one that really had that fire passion, and it started out, with supplying the family with food. I mean, when you go back into the 70s and stuff, we were living rural, didn't have much money. My dad didn't have much for jobs, so we had a place out in the country because he didn't want us in the city. It cost a lot of money, and we didn't have much. So we lived off the land, basically. We had a garden that was the size of a field, and then we'd fish, and I would hunt, and we'd use that as food. I mean, to supplement, what we ate. And I killed a lot of stuff. And I mean, I had a trap line. We ate what we trapped. I mean, we didn't like throw the muskrat carcasses and stuff out. We ate them. And, it teaches you a lot. And, I started out just killing deer. And what happens is you start getting real good at it when you kill a lot of them. And you start, when you start filling all your tags and stuff like that, you start holding back a little bit and wanting something a little bigger. And at some point, I was shooting nice bucks, and I think a lot of people get to that stage where they start shooting like the middle range bucks, and they don't get past them. They just stay there kind of stagnant.
Yeah.
Because they learn how to kill them, and really it's like a whole different deer from the mature deer. And unless you hunt mature deer, you just keep killing those, 2 and 3 year olds. But I was getting good at that. And then a deer in my area, the deer in my area at that time in like the 70s, everybody hunted. Remember, like all the families had hunters. So there was a lot more hunting pressure than now, and nobody was like anti-hunter or, I mean, you'd hear about people like that, but you never meet somebody like that.
Right.
Where now it's like everybody's like that, But so a lot of people hunted, and a lot of people hunted for food in those days. Everybody had money problems in the 70s, and because of that, deer rarely made it past a year and a half. They get a pair of antlers and they die, and there's a lot of poaching going on. You'd hear gunshots all night long, and we had a deer that, that made it one year and got to 2.5, and it was a 10-pointer at 2.5. And I wanted to get that deer, and I didn't, and I made it to 3.5. And I found a shed from it from 2.5, and then I found both sheds from 3.5. And then I really wanted to kill it. And I put a goal to figure it out. And I started realizing that the closer I got to bedding areas, the more I saw it in daylight, and figuring out where he was bedding seemed to be the way to go about it. And back in those days, everybody preached you don't go near a bedding area, but I didn't have any mentors or anything to tell me I was doing something wrong. I just saw that worked, getting close to him. So I started getting closer and closer to bedding areas. I got opportunities. I ended up, one day I shot him in the ass with my bow and didn't kill him. And I had a bunch of interactions with him. I was young and green. And I just decided that I was going to figure out all those bedding areas and figure out how he lived in them and how he came in and out of them. And I'd make setups and hunt them the next year. And I did this kind of like when I was shed antler hunting. I started figuring some of his stuff out because I would pick up his shed antlers. And back then you didn't find much for sheds because remember everything got shot at 1.5 years. But I was getting the sheds from that buck. I got sheds from him from 2.5 till he's, till I shot him at 5.5. But I ended up going in and figure out all this deer's bedding areas. And he lived in a small area, like a square mile. And I didn't get him with the bow, but come gun season, I made a plan to go into every one of those bedding areas and walk into the bedding area with that gun real slow and quiet and still hunt. And when he jumps up, I'm going to shoot him, And I learned real quick by jumping deer in those bedding areas that they're laying there with the wind at their back, staring downwind. So when you come straight into the wind, it's a trap. They're going to bust you, And then I learned real quick to come in on a cross angle. And I was kicking deer, and some of them might have been him. Then it got to be Thanksgiving Day. We had in Wisconsin, we get a week or 9 days. We get 2 weekends in the week in between, so we get 9 days. And when Thanksgiving Day, because it's always Thanksgiving week, came, I was almost out of bedding areas, and there was one in the back that was way on the back end of this property, and it was like this grassy field went down into this draw, and the draw was real thick with tangles, and it was an old farm dump where they used to jump their garbage before they had garbage pickup and stuff.
Right. And
there's some old cars and stuff in there, but it was all grown in with dogwood and brush and real thick. But it was like this thick draw. It was all full of rubs, and when I went in there was beds all over the place in the big rubs, and I knew he was living there at least part of the time. But the trouble was, if you walk up the draw, he's just going to scoot out one of the sides or the end. You walk on one side, he's going to scoot out the other side. And I was thinking about it, but there's a hill like on the point of it coming up out of the draw where it went down, where everything ran into this draw. There's a little high elevation where you see all the way around it. And I got on that high elevation, and I picked up rocks and I threw them at this car down there that was in the bedding area, the old rickety Chevy or something. And when I hit the top of that car, the buck jumped up and ran out the side, and I unloaded the shotgun, and last shell I hit him and got him. And that really kind of sparked and really ignited the whole I need to hunt them in the beds thing. And ever since then, I've been improving on that, learning how they bed and, why they bed in places, where they bed, how they go in with the wind and all that stuff. It's just been improving year after year after year, and I'm getting better and better at this.
So was that kind of your, I guess what most people call it, like a aha moment when you
Yeah, I guess you say that. That was what really burnt this whole thing into existence.
And so that was, I guess.
And that's still one of my biggest bucks to this day.
Is that right?
Yeah.
So when was that? I mean, I guess in the timeline of things, when did you kill that buck in relation to how long had you been deer hunting? I guess at that point is what I'm getting at.
I think I was, I don't know, I was early 20s. It was 1980 something. So
okay, so I mean, it took you several years, I guess. Of you sounds like you were probably
I killed some nice deer before that.
Okay,
but nothing like that. I mean, that was a true monarch, and that was and I killed him because of that, figuring out how they bedded kind of thing.
Gotcha.
I had gravitated to beds before that. I'd seen them coming out of beds and move to them and stuff. But that particular hunt for that deer, which actually lasted a few years, because of him, hunting them from 2.5 on, kind of really taught me how to bed hunt,
Yeah.
So kind of.
Yeah. I'll go ahead, Robert.
I was just going to say, so kind of since that moment where you picked this one buck out, you really wanted to learn, what he was doing, how he was doing it, and then eventually being able to harvest him. Is that kind of how you've hunted deer for the rest of your life? Just finding a buck that's of caliber that you want to hunt, and then, learning everything about this deer and hunting him down.
Yeah, kind of. Nowadays, and like more recently, I shouldn't say nowadays, but years after that, I gravitated more to, I'd figure out, I'd have multiple big bucks that I'm figuring out at the same time. I'd hop from buck to buck, not to overhunt one or something. Unless one's really huge, then I'd just concentrate on. But for the most part, there's multiple deer that I hunt now, but back then there was one. But now if I go out of state and I go to another state, a lot of times I'm just hunting for a big buck or something, and then I got to locate one, because there really isn't big bucks on every property. That's a huge mistake people make. They will. Are you still there?
Yeah. Yep. Sorry about that.
That's right. That's a huge mistake that a lot of hunters make is that they'll hunt the same property over and over again. They think, and I'd be willing to bet the majority of your viewers are like this, or your listeners. They'll go to the same property over and over again, and they'll try to target the biggest bucks that are on the property. And the truth of the matter is you kill a few of those big bucks, and certain things come through the area and knock bucks out, and you don't always have a big buck on your property unless you got a really, really good property. So really, you gotta move around and find the bucks, and I still got to do that to this day. I mean, if I'm going to hunt public, I have to go to the properties that have a buck this year, and hunt that buck. Obviously, I know of some properties that have a big buck most years, but not all years. And if you're hunting the same property over and over again and there's no bucks there to hunt, what are you going to hunt? Right. You're going to either have to lower your standards or not hunt.
So has there ever become a time, I guess, since we're on this topic, have you ever lowered your standards? I mean, because obviously everybody that knows Dan Infalt, if anybody's listening to this episode and they know who you are, obviously you're known for killing really mature bucks. So has that ever lowered? You've just not had that deer.
Yeah, you know what? I'm not stuck on the size of a deer as much as what people would think. I mean, if there's not something around to hunt, I'll shoot a decent buck. I mean, I've shot in 2- and 3-year-old deer. In a lot of cases, people think that they're older because, like, I shot a 2-year-old that scored 140. Who knows what it would have been if it was allowed to live, but it was on public land, heavy pressured stuff. But I'll lower my standards for sure. I mean, I've shot in a lot of deer in the 100, 110 inch range. You just probably don't hear or see them. But, and then I'll go hunt someplace else. But I put my standards at what the properties and what I'm seeing puts me at. I don't lock myself in at something. If I'm hunting a farm in Iowa that's private and has 200-inch bucks on it, I'm not shooting a 150-inch buck. But if I'm hunting back home and I'm in the middle of a swamp that's got massive hunting pressure and a 150-inch buck walks by, I'm shooting in a heartbeat and I'm ecstatic. So. my standards alter with what I have to work with.
Yeah, which makes sense. I mean, especially coming from South Georgia. I mean, let's be honest. Brian can attest for this. You see a 140-inch 2-year-old. I mean, it's just not common down here. I mean, most people would be ecstatic.
It's probably almost unheard of in Georgia. Yeah,
if
right.
you see a 140-inch deer, period, you've done something in South Georgia. So yeah, for sure. And yeah, I made the mistake as a young bow hunter. I remember, I'd shot a few does, and I'd shot. I guess it was my first buck was just like a 2.5-year-old 8-pointer, and right after I shot that buck, I guess I'd already watched too many hunting videos or something, but I suddenly thought, well, I'm going to hold out for a Pope and Young or something, and I went a lot of years in there just letting 1.5-year-old and 2.5-year-old bucks walk by, not shooting deer, and I think that did way more harm than good, because then once I started getting those opportunities on some decent deer, man, I completely choked because I didn't have the experience of shooting those deer. And so yeah, you gotta kind of gauge your expectations, like you said, not only on the property you're hunting, but your experience level as well.
Yeah, I like killing deer, and I think since the 70s, I think there's only 2 years ever that I didn't shoot a buck. And since that big buck, all the years except for those 2 years were, I put bucks in the wall, mounted bucks. So I'm setting my expectations so I kill. I've got a friend who set his goal for 170 or bigger, and he went like 30 years without shooting deer. And he was getting opportunities and blowing them because he'd get an opportunity once in 5 years. And really, to kill a big buck is a lot more than just getting them in front of you.
Oh yeah,
you got to learn how to kill them.
Yeah,
even if you shoot a doe every now and then, it's not the same thing.
No,
you got to learn when to draw on those things. You got to learn, you got to learn how to handle your emotions and things like that. And it can be really rough on a guy. So I mean, that getting in a mode of constantly killing deer makes you a better killer. When I grew up hunting, I grew up killing everything I saw, and that made me a better hunter. Even though that's the kind of person nowadays you'd look down on some kid out there killing everything. You'd be like, let some seeds grow, man. But that kid is making himself a better hunter. I mean, and really, what are we out there for? Yeah. It's not really supposed to be you're out there to put wall mounts up and gloat to people. You're supposed to be out there getting substance. You're supposed to be out there getting food, and the trophy's just an added bonus. You start holding out for trophies because you're good enough that you can kill deer. I mean, so set your goals where you're going to kill something, but it's a hard to reach goal. You know what I mean? I would never suggest that somebody pass up the biggest buck they ever saw. No. I mean, that's just ridiculous. I mean, even if that's a 100-inch 8-pointer, if it's your biggest buck, shoot it. Just enjoy the moment, and don't worry about what everybody on Facebook and everything else is doing, because it doesn't really matter. That's not you. Look at where you're at in your life, and it's never apples to apples, because if you're making some competition about this with everybody else, you're never going to beat the guy that's got the 1,000-acre farm down the street. You're never going to beat the guy that's got all the money and goes on guided hunts. You're never going to beat the guy who's so rich he can go hunting anytime he wants, and he takes the whole season off and hunts. Even if he's hunting public land, he's going to do better than you because he hunts every day. I mean, you're going to get into a money war if you want to make this a competition, because you can literally buy yourself success. So you really have to make that competition with yourself. And then again, I mean, if you look back at my history, I got so addicted to killing big bucks that I neglected my family. I was missing my kids' birthday parties and Halloweens and stuff, because hunting was more important to me. And if I could go back, definitely I wouldn't have done that, in the mindset that I'm in now. But how much are you going to sell out just for a big deer, So I mean, set that goal so that you're it's a hard to achieve goal, and you're proud of what you accomplish, but don't compare it to anybody else. Just compare it to yourself.
Yeah, and I think that's a great point, what you just said there. I mean, yeah, you may have 190-inch deer on camera, but like you just said there, obviously family and being there for family events and stuff, there's going to be other deer that are big. I'm not saying every deer you're going to find is being 190 inches. I mean, that's once in a lifetime, especially down in our area. But you know, don't compare yourself to other people. If you shoot a 120-inch buck and it makes you happy, hey, it makes you happy. I think me and Brian can attest for that hunting down here in South Georgia. More me than Brian. I set my standards probably a little too high, and I've probably passed some deer that I probably should have shot. But you know, it's just, I think with social media and the way that the hunting world is today, and I think social media plays a big part in it. You post a deer that you're happy with, but then you second guess because some people are going to shame you because you shot a 2.5-year-old 115-inch deer.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Yeah. It's a sad state of affairs when it comes to that kind of stuff. But, and, you know, shoot what makes you happy, and not quit worrying about what anybody else is shooting. That's what it boils down to. But yeah,
you know, bottom line, I mean, nobody really, you know, remembers the deer you shot except for you. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And, you know, when I go through my pictures and stuff and I look back at these old pictures of me when I was young with, you know, like a 70-inch 8-pointer and stuff, I remember those hunts vividly and how exciting they were and stuff. And I go down to the taxidermy shop and look at my bucks and I'll see a 140-inch buck up there. And I have to think for a minute, when did I shoot that? I don't even remember that buck. But I remember those small bucks and stuff even more. I mean, those were exciting deer. I mean, just whatever's exciting is what matters the most. And you find that out when you're older in life, unfortunately. You know, those deer probably mean more to me now than they did when I shot them.
Yeah. And you talk about, you know, missing some stuff there with your family. And I guess that brings up a question. Just, I guess, how has your priorities and your goals, expectations, that kind of stuff, how have those changed over the years when it comes to deer hunting?
Well, I guess I've found myself at a point where I'm satisfied with my accomplishments. And I think if Dan Infalt shot a 170-inch buck next year, it wouldn't make much difference if I didn't. Either way, it wouldn't matter much to anybody else but me. So I only worry about me, really. So I don't hunt as much as I used to, and take that with a grain of salt because I hunt almost every day. But I take a day out of the week and I take my wife out. Now, all my kids are grown up, married, and moved out. So she's the only one I got to worry about. But I take a day and I take her out and spend a whole day with her every week. I never used to do that. And it's not like she ever got on me, or she supports everything and was always all about me chasing my dreams. You know, it's more in me, you know, that's just the way I feel like I'm missing out on other things in life. And there's more things important to me than killing deer. If you would have asked me that 30 years ago, I think it would have been deer was more important. But, my priorities have changed to, you know, I guess, you know, you're getting closer to death. You know, I got family members and friends that every year somebody dies or somebody ends up getting cancer or something. And, you know, you start seeing that and you start thinking, you know, really, I think I'd rather, spend a day at my daughter's family party or something than go hunting. You know, I'll find times to hunt and, you know, basically I'm a lot more skilled now. Where when I was younger, I killed a lot of the deer I killed were from sheer determination. You know, I wanted them so bad that I would just hunt them down and kill them. Where now it's more strategic. I'm thinking about how they're making their moves. It's like a chess game. You know, if I miss a hunt or I don't go, I'm thinking about when would be the best time to go in after them. You know, I don't want to tip my cards that I'm after them. So it's more about timing. You know, thinking about when other people are going to go in and ruin it for me. How am I going to, you know, hit that? And I think rather than just target huge bucks, what I like to do more now is really go to different areas, travel around the country, hunt spots I've never hunted, areas I've never hunted.
Yeah.
And try something new, challenge myself. I like to go, believe it or not to big buck destinations. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but I like to go to like places where like people see you can't do it, like Michigan or Pennsylvania or, you know, and to me, there's some sort of perverse satisfaction out of going where everybody else is hunting and can't get it done and getting it done.
Oh yeah. Yep.
I don't know. It's a weird thing, but that's kind of the draw to the public land, is that every person is on the same playing field. You know,
Yep.
Every person in this country could walk out into that swamp and kill that buck, but you picked the right day, the right bed, the right wind, the right and you went in there and did it. To me, there's a huge satisfaction, and I don't think other people, see that, but you do personally. And anybody who has gone out and hunted a specific buck, figured out where he was bedding, figured out the timing of when he's using those beds, what time of the year, figured out a way to get close, left it alone till the right timing, went in there and had everything work out and had that buck get up out of that bed and walk right to him, knows exactly what I'm talking about. But I think anybody who hasn't had that happen doesn't realize the magnitude and what you feel when it happens.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I look like, so I guess the next question I've got is, so people that know Dan Infalt, like last year, you killed a really big 10-pointer out of a swamp area. If I'm remembering correctly, you hunted him 2 or 3 times. I could be wrong on that. But then you were able to harvest him a really big 10-pointer in the swamp area. But so guys like yourself that, consistently are able to hunt down and kill big bucks, do you just have a different way of thinking, than most other hunters, or is it just a unique ability to be able to do that? Like, how does that play out?
For me, I mean, it just seems like common sense. But obviously it's not, or everybody to be doing it. So the way I look at it is, I'll look at a property. If I know there's a big buck there, there's something I know about big bucks that other people aren't getting. And what I know is they will not tolerate people. So if they're there is some spot that's getting overlooked where that thing's living. And the overall majority of bucks I get that are in the age class of 5 years old and older are shot in some odd place where nobody else hunts. And that was the same case. I mean, he was living in solid cattails, and there's just a couple little, there's like 2 or 3 spots where there was a tree you could hunt. And I wasn't able to kill that buck. I hunted that buck for years. I believe, and we sent a tooth in to see, but I believe from my trail cam pics and from sightings that deer is probably at least 7.5 years old, maybe older.
Wow.
And what I did was I had done this a few times. I went out and really scoured the perimeters and looked at his bedding areas and stuff. And in them cattails, it's so hard to hunt. It's hard to figure anything out. But I'd go out every spring and I'd look at it, and the last few years, and try to figure out some way to get at them. And I stumbled into a patch of willow brush that was in the cattails that you couldn't see on an aerial, and you couldn't see over the cattails. You had to get close to them to see them because they're the same height as cattails. And what it was just a little dry spot where there's a little hump that came up, but no trees had grown on it. So it really didn't show up. And it was just covered with beds. And all the willow brush was rubbed. So it's bucks. It's right in his core area. And there's this massive trail coming out of it going into this point. And when I got up on the point, there's some real high rubs. And the reason I say high is because smaller bucks can rub big trees. But it seems to me only mature bucks rub trees higher than your waist, at where the center of the rub is. And I was pretty sure that buck, or there's 3 big bucks in that area, but he was the only one I saw the year before. So he was the only one I knew for sure was alive. I was figuring he was bedding in that spot. So looking at the spot, the willow brush that was there, that stuff loses its leaves in early October when it starts getting a little colder up here. Obviously it's cooler up here than it is in Georgia. But they lose their leaves in like mid-October. And those deer are not going to lay in the open sun. So that told me there were September beds, and we open in early September in Wisconsin. So knowing that, and looking at the sheer number of beds, I said that buck has to be in there in early season. I mean, if I came out here on a September day, he has to be laying here. And the trail comes right out past, and there's this little bush you get a tree stand in. It was probably about the big around as my the lower part of my leg, and I was able to get a tree stand up about 12 feet, where I was just high enough to see over the brush around me and see the trails coming out of that bed, and I could see the willow brush, but the cattails were like 8 feet tall, so you wouldn't see a deer walking to them until you got close. And I went in there in the summer, and it was really hard to get to the spot because you had to go through waist deep water, and cattails that were like 10 feet high that would make a lot of noise. So I literally cut a trail through the cattails because there was none where I wanted to walk. The only way to get through there was to take a deer trail and walk right past the bedding. So I made a trail to get there through this water and cattails, so I could get to the dry hump quietly and sneak around to this tree that was 75 yards from the beds. And the first time I hunted it, I went in there. I was waiting for a strong, brisk north wind because I thought a strong north wind, he wouldn't hear me, and the wind would be in my face. And by looking at the beds, I figured he was bedding in there any wind, because the beds are facing in all directions. So I went in there and sat for the first time 2 seasons ago, and I snuck to that tree, set up my stand, slid into the stand, and about a half an hour before dark, a doe popped out of a bed 15 yards from me. So I'd say I got in there pretty quiet.
Yeah, it's like...
But she gets up and starts feeding right in front of me. And then a big doe gets up about 20 or 30 yards in front of me, right on the edge of the cattails, pops up, and she starts feeding straight at me and comes through the brush and underneath me. And remember, I'm only like 12 feet up, and I had left, it took me 3 sticks to get in the stand, and I had 5 of them on my setup, so I had 2 sticks laying at the base of the tree. When it got underneath me, it looked at those sticks. And meanwhile, I can hear a deer get up in the willow brush, and he's coming through the water. I can't see him. He's right in front of me, but I can hear him, and I can see the cattails moving. And I can tell it's a buck trail because coming out of that bedding, because all the cattails are snapped off at antler height. But anywho, the doe is underneath me and locks on those sticks, and then starts looking at the sticks going up the tree, and then looks at me in the tree and just comes unglued. I mean, she's only standing a few feet from me. And she jumps out of her skin and runs back where she was, which was right in between me and the supposed incoming buck, and starts snorting and will not stop, just nonstop blowing. And the buck goes quiet, goes away, and the doe just keeps snorting and snorting and snorting, and finally leaves. And then just to keep them honest, I went out there again the next day, and nothing was around. And then I left it alone. I know better than to keep trying, because you'll screw a spot like that up. So I backed out, didn't go back for a year. The next year, which was last year, I was waiting for that first early season brisk north wind. And when we got it on day 5, I snuck up that trail, which was still open, because when you cut those cattails, the deer started using the trails. Took the trail in there, slid up the tree the same way, and then all I could do was hope that there ain't no does there this time. And there wasn't. And right about the same time, I heard something get up in the willow brush, start coming to me, sloshing through. And I'm looking at the opening, and I'm imagining that buck as he walks out, walks in. It's a pretty cool hunt.
Heck yeah. I mean, all right, so I got to ask. So down here in the South, we don't, particularly the area that me and Brian live in, we don't have cattail marches. I mean, it's just not something that we have. But we have a lot of cutover areas that could basically be the same thing. So, year 2, 3, 4, 5 of these cutovers, basically get up 8, 10 feet, 12 feet, and kind of the same. There's just no water and stuff involved, so there's no dry spots compared to wet areas. But
yep.
Have you ever hunted anything like that? Have you ever hunted a cutover?
When I hunt the North Woods and in some of the areas around here that are heavily wooded, what we hunt is what we call clear cuts. They're like little pockets where they logged, and then they grow thick. And the way I get deer out of those is not quite like the cattails. The cattails, they go find islands and stuff. They make trails through. The cutovers, they do go to islands and stuff in them, but it depends on how thick they are. A lot of times they're too thick for deer with real big racks to just walk through. For the most part, I find the biggest bucks downwind of those cutovers on the downwind side, up into the cutover just slightly, watching out into the open woods to the downwind side. So they get the back and the cover to the wind and the cover to their back. And they sit in a spot where they can see downwind of it. And generally you'll find a bunch of rubs and stuff to that downwind side, coming in and out. And the trouble is, I mean, if you walk down that downwind side and set up there, he's watching you and he goes into the thick to escape, and obviously you're not coming through the thick to get at him. So you got to go in there and kind of look at those beds before you hunt and look at how that deer's coming out and find a spot where you can set up where you're just out of sight, sound, and hearing, but close enough to get them in that daylight window. And that's another thing. I mean, a lot of these really big bucks, and it's not so much with the smaller ones. The smaller ones will come out of those beds an hour before dark or whatever. But those big bucks will get up an hour before dark, but they'll move real slow. And by the time they get to where I can kill them, it's usually pretty close to closing time. And I'm only 75 or 100 yards from that bed. So you got to be pretty close to these things too. So really that pre-scouting has been pretty helpful for me, is to really pick the tree. Because in a lot of cases, there's like one or two trees that I can be in that whole forest where I'll kill that deer. Any further back and it's too dark, any further forward and I'm kicking him out of his bed. It's a pretty small window where we're setting up. So when he's setting up like that on that downwind side of one of those cutovers, watching that open area, you got to go in there and kind of look at, well, okay, what can he see? What can he hear? How's the wind going to be going? And what's the thermals going to be doing? Where can I set up? And I'm going to get, what I usually do is I go right into the beds and I look out from the beds and I see how far he can see and stuff. And then I follow his trails out until I'm outside of that sight window and stuff. And then I figure out what tree I should be in and how I'd go about getting to that tree without spooking him or anything else.
Yeah, man, I'll say from that last story of the buck you killed in the cattails, that's probably a testament right there to one of the reasons you're as successful at this as you are, because I don't know too many hunters, including myself, that, knowing that buck was in there, that wouldn't have been just trying to hunt that thing, day after day, thinking, sooner or later I'm going to get in here and he's going to screw up and come by me. So to have the patience to say, look, I'm just going to back out and we're going to hunt this next year. That's tough. That's
yeah.
But
you look at I live on a big public marsh, and because of that, it draws a lot of attention. So a lot of people started hunting it and using my methods and coming from all over the place because they probably figure that's where I kill most of my deer. And I have killed quite a few out there. There's a couple spots in there that really never got pressure until people started hearing of me and stuff because they're real remote, like islands out there and stuff. And there's a couple of islands, one in particular that always would hold a big buck. It has a perfect bedding area in there and stuff, and would hold a big buck all the time. And they're hard to kill, but I'd give it a hunt or two a year and try and move in there and had some really great encounters on that island. But every now and then somebody would come in there, and you pretty much most people get there with a boat, where I would hike in, because even swimming through the swamps and stuff is less intrusive than pulling up with a boat. But they would come in there with a boat and find that and get in there and see big rubs in there and stuff near the bedding area. And when you get somebody that would find it, what they generally do is they set up a tree stand, a trail camera, they cut a trail to it, and they tend to hunt it consistently. You'll see garbage under the stand. You'll see a pounded trail. You can see where they park the boat all the time, and it'll just go dead. And I'll check on the spot every year, and if the guy keeps coming, I'll just, I won't hunt it. I'll just move on, but I'll just watch it until he's gone. And what I've noticed is not only does he have to leave, but a year or two has to go by of him being gone before the deer even start coming back. It's amazing how much of an impact it has. And I got to imagine a guy that's hunting an island where he's got to take a boat and set it up and drive a half an hour through a lake and up a river and all that crap is probably, not doing that every day. He's probably doing that like every other weekend or something, or a couple times during rut. and it's having that big of an impact.
Yeah. Well,
when you look at I've got these spots where I know the bedding areas really well, and I can slip in and shoot bucks out of them pretty much on a regular basis. I know some primary bedding where if I go in there, I'm going to get a shot at a decent buck. But with that said, those spots I can shoot, 2 and 3 year old deer consistently. Every time I get one of these mature bucks that's like 6 or 7 years old or whatever, those deer are almost always on my very first hunt or the very first hunt of the year. It's very seldom I get them on multiple hunts in a year in the same spot. Even though I'll hunt like that sometimes. So, I'll throw hunts at, and I always, if I see a deer or, I got reason to believe he was there, I'll come back the next day. But those deer, that when they get to that age frame, they have a knack for knowing you were there. And that total moving around and getting in new positions and finding those overlooked spots where those things live is really the key,
So I guess let's talk about what you just mentioned on there on the bedding areas that you can go in and you consistently kill, 2, 3 year old bucks. Cause I think a lot of people here, and especially in the Southeast, they're going to be plenty happy with that. Not a lot of guys are going out. Obviously it's a plus if you go out and you shoot 170, 180 inch buck. I mean, that's ultimately the ultimate goal for everybody, but kind of what does that look like for you to be able to find these areas that consistently hold quote unquote mature bucks that you can go out and harvest on a regular basis?
Well, generally there are going to be some overlooked spot that doesn't get pressure, because if they get pressure, the deer wouldn't bed like that. You're going to get in there. There's going to be a lot of rubs. There's going to be a lot of beds. There's going to be a small area of about, I would say they average about like an acre in size. And it's just going to hold a ton of beds and sign of deer coming in and out of it. And those are what I call primary bedding areas. And generally they're bedded for most of the year. But there's still a peak window usually. Probably, I know of about 6 or 8 of them. I probably ran into a lot more than that in my day, but people find them, they burn out. Somebody logs something near them or something, and they end. But there's a few of them that I still know of that are still pretty active. There's one bedding area that has about 100 beds in it that for I think it was 8 years or maybe 9 years straight, I shot a big buck there opening day of gun for 8 or 9 years straight in the same bedding area, the little acre spot.
Now, are these like community bedding areas? I guess with that many beds, is it does and bucks both?
They can hold. Yeah, you get does and buck bedding areas. You get them in all buck bedding areas. If a buck ain't there, does will bed there. If a buck is there, sometimes they'll bed just a little further out. You get satellite bedding. You get smaller bucks that bed there, and it seems like the primary beds, the biggest bucks will get them. I've seen where like a buck comes in and beds down. And then a bigger buck comes in, or not necessarily bigger, but maybe more dominant comes in, and that buck will get up out of that bed, move to a different bed, and that buck will bed there. And I've seen it where a buck goes in there, sees another buck bedded, backs out and beds to the side. There's like a hierarchy to that. And then when you get rut, sometimes they won't even allow them in the same bedding area.
Yeah. Now you've
I've also noticed too that there's some of these bedding areas won't hold a mature buck. Like mature bucks have a higher, they have like they will not bed in certain spots because of safety or whatever. They'll only pick certain spots. So it's like more of a narrower window where they'll bed, when they get to be like that 5-6 year old range.
Right. Now you've been involved with a few of these public land challenges with the hunting public and some other guys.
Mm-hmm.
And I always enjoy watching those and just kind of seeing how the different guys approach, a completely new area. Can you kind of walk us through that process for you coming into a completely, new area you've never laid eyes on before? What's your scouting process, I guess?
So what I'm doing first is I'm going over maps. I'm trying to find spots where I think other people might be overlooking, or spots that would hold deer that are probably getting, missed or looked over or whatever. And I find as many of them as I can. I mark them on maps. And when I get to the area, I start going to those places. and scouting to hunt. So when I scout to hunt, I'm guessing where the bedding is, and I'm scouting my way in. I'm looking at the sign, and I'm basing whether or not I hunt there based on the sign. And I do a lot of walking. So I do a lot of scouting with my stand on my back, where I'll walk transition edges and stuff. And I try to stay at a point where I'm guessing where they're bedding, and I'm watching the wind and stuff, and I'm looking at the sign, then going to the next spot, and I'm constantly watching my maps and making my way through a wood lot, looking at the different spots. And a lot of times I'll pick a wood lot and I'll go to an area that looks the best and should have good sign. And if I don't see big buck sign pretty quick, I don't even look at the whole woods. I just back out, go to a different property. Because big bucks leave sign. If they're there, there's going to be big rubs. There's going to be, scrapes with big tracks in them and stuff. If there's nothing like that, you're on the wrong property. Or if there's like one big rub or two or three, it's probably a deer that comes through there in the middle of the night. If he lives there, he's laying sign. They all rub. All deer do. So there's going to be those big high rubs if there's a mature buck living there. So I'm going to find the sign. And that's the biggest thing, is that I just keep moving until I find a deer. Then once I find one, I narrow it down. Then I start hunting all the bedding areas around that particular property where I found a sign. And if I'm on a travel trip like that, I will hunt very aggressively, and I'll hunt that property hard until I either get a sighting or I burn that property out, and then I'll move on to the next property.
Okay. So are you going to, once you've done your map scouting, you got there, you're putting boots on the ground, are you going to dedicate a day or any specific time strictly to scouting? Or are you just, like you said, you're just going to put your stand on your back and head into the woods and be ready to hunt, as soon as you find the first good sign?
What's worked for me is to not even bother with mornings until I'm onto something.
Okay.
So I'll scout all day, and then I'll go back to the better looking spot that I had found and hunt it, whatever looked the best. And then the next day I'll do that again. If I see a situation where it looks like it'd be a good morning sit, I'll go sit it. But a lot of my success is going to be due to a lot of scouting. So I'm going to find a deer first. And then once I find that deer, then I might narrow it down. Then I might start looking at some morning hunts. But going into something blind you've never hunted before in the morning and setting up and hunting is difficult.
Yeah. Yeah.
You don't even know what you're getting into. A lot of times you get into those woods, they're thicker than you thought, or they're too open. Sometimes you can see that on a map. Sometimes you can see that, you zoom in, you can see really big round tops on the trees, and you go, okay, this is a mature forest. And sometimes you can look and say it's going to be a thick forest, but in a lot of cases you really can't tell until you're in there.
Now, how many days does that play out over? Because like me and Brian went on a hunt 2 years ago in a different state. We only had 3 days to get it done, and ultimately we did not accomplish the goals getting it done. No. We got our butts whooped. But so what's that time frame look like? Because if you've only got 3 days, how do you give up a morning to?
Well, you're not giving it up. What you're doing is you're making it more useful. You're getting more out of it. Because if you go hunt, look at it like this. I mean, I go on a rut trip and I hunt, let's say 4 hours in the morning, 4 hours in the afternoon. That leaves me 2 hours during the day to scout. You've got to have a deer to hunt. You got to find one to hunt. When are you scouting? So you're just sitting in a tree. I mean, you could sit there for the whole freaking week and you won't see a thing. You got to get onto one and then hunt. That's my mindset, is you're not going to kill one just by climbing the first random tree you find. You got to get on good sign, and you got to find a good animal to hunt. Not all public land and not all properties are going to hold a big buck. So you have to go out there and find one. Once you find them, then you can start concentrating on putting some mornings in and some afternoons. Now I'll hunt every single afternoon because I just go back to whatever looked the best. But I got to have some time to scout, and I have to sacrifice something. And if I haven't found a good morning spot, I'm scouting. I'm not just going to go out and randomly sit in a tree.
So what is that morning spot? Because I think Brian can attest to this. Going back to the hunt we went on, there was fresh sign everywhere. I mean, every place we went, it was fresh rubs, fresh scrapes, fresh tracks. I mean, just better.
So I'm concentrating on terrain. for a lot of that. There can be sign everywhere. There can be beds everywhere. But big bucks generally use terrain to travel in daylight, and they bed in certain types of terrain. So the rest is just filler. They could be doing that at any time of the night, So if it was a morning spot and you want to know what I'm looking for there, it's probably going to be a funnel between bedding areas. Probably a ridge side, a third up. Maybe a thick area that connects two bedding areas that a deer could kind of move in relatively safety during the rut. But I'm not going to set up right next to bedding, because when bucks go into bedding, they tend to circle downwind. And even if they're coming from upwind, they'll J-hook around the bedding and come in from downwind. They'll smell that bedding first. And a lot of times they come in before daylight and screw you up. And when they get downwind, they smell you. And if you're too far downwind, they hook in before you. And if you're too far upwind, they're going to smell you when they hook into the wind. It's a difficult task, and they don't take the main trails. But when they leave bedding, when they come out of it, when they exit it, they don't have any regard for the wind. They come right down the trails that have the rubs on them, the tracks, the beat trails that come out of the bedding, and it's easy. So mornings during the rut can be really good, but generally they're really good with like the 2 and 3 year olds that are running around chasing does and are out seeking breeding real heavily. Those older bucks are really smart about how they move. I mean, in case in point, if sitting in a rut funnel works so well, how come nobody's out on public land shooting one year after year after year doing that? I mean, it's not that easy. You can shoot 2 and 3 year olds like that constantly in those rut funnels. And I kind of struggle with that myself. I mean, you go on a public land challenge, a 2 or 3 year old would be a good deer to probably win the challenge, right?
Yeah.
But it's just not in me. I have to hunt mature deer. It's in me. I'll shoot a 2 or 3 year old if it comes by. I'm not above that, but I'm hunting for a mature buck, because in my mind, you can't kill mature bucks regularly on a regular basis unless you hunt them. If you hunt for 2 year olds, that's all you're going to shoot. And that's why you'll see people that get, they got a wall full of 3 year olds, it's because they're not hunting mature bucks. When they get to be 5 or 6, it's like they're a different animal. It's like you're hunting pheasants and expecting.
You there, Dan?
Yep.
Mm-hmm. Okay. You cut out there. You said it's like you're hunting pheasants, and then you went silent for a second.
Oh, I said it's like you're hunting pheasants and expecting rabbits.
Oh, gotcha.
So it's like a whole different animal to shoot a 5-year-old over a 3-year-old.
So on a new property like this, going back to the talking about the sign you're looking for, I guess, and I know a lot of this is just going to be kind of feel. I mean, just experience. But what sign or what amount of sign is it going to take for you to say, okay, this is where I need to just hang my stand here, and this is where I need to be for this evening?
Well, that's a good question, because it might be a single rub that's of the right height. It might be a single track or a scrape. It's more about how fresh it is, and that it's adjacent to bedding, coming in and out of bedding. If if you're going to hunt a funnel, that funnel has fresh rubs that are still bleeding on them, that were made in the last day or so. But mainly, I'm trying to hunt bedding a lot, so I'm looking for that fresh sign coming out of bedding. That tells me a deer's been bedding in that area. So it doesn't have to be a lot. Mature bucks don't really rub up those bedding areas that much neither. So you might just find one rub or two. And when you look at it and it's still wet and tacky, that's what interests me. I want to see that rub, the center of it, be waist high or higher. I mean, that might be a little lower on your southern bucks. I think Georgia bucks are a little shorter in stance than up here. So that might be a lower than that with your bucks. But I'm looking at the height of center of that rub, not the height as high as the antlers go, but the height of center, where the bases are rubbing on the tree to bare bark on a tree solid enough that it's not getting bent over. That's what tells me it's a bigger animal, and I want to see it be a tacky rub, and then I want to look at that rub is coming out of an area that I think that buck might be bedding in 100 yards or so away. depending on the terrain, maybe 200 yards. So that's what I'm looking for. It doesn't have to be a lot of sign. It just has to be the right sign.
Yeah, so I guess I got to ask, because our listeners are familiar with the story, but I had a deer that was showing up on camera, probably about 135-inch 9-pointer, looked to be about 3.5, 4.5 years old, which is really good for the southern part of Georgia. And I found a rub, which was waist high. It was going into this almost like a cattail marsh. It's not a cattail marsh, but kind of a similar situation. It was a wetland area.
Mm-hmm.
It was very expansive. So I followed in, I walked by this tree, and I just had that moment where I was like, okay, I have to get in this tree. And put a stick, it was one stick to get to the base of my stand. I hunted it one time and had an encounter with about 175-inch 10-pointer at about 11 yards, and I screwed it up. And it ended up spooking him. He ran off back the way he came and blew the whole situation up. So on an area like this is an area I can hunt all year long. It's public land, but an area I can hunt all year long. So what does that look like if you have that situation where you encounter a deer that caliber and you screw it up, you bump him, he runs back the way he came? What does that look like for you based on that situation, that you're going to go back and hunt that deer or try to harvest that deer? Is it going to be the next year? Is it going to be 2 days later? Because that may happen on a public land challenge. You go in, you find this deer that's that caliber, you bump him, and then you only have 5 more days to harvest that buck. What does that look like?
Well, I'm gonna be hunting that deer. Whether it's a public land challenge or someplace I hunt all the time, I'm gonna run to a deer that caliber. That's my target now. So I might give that tree another shot. I mean, if I'm stuck on 5 days, probably not. But if it was back home, I'd probably sit it again the next day, or sit near it where he won't see me, because he's going to probably look right back in that tree again. But I might try that same trail. I don't think he's going to come, but I think the odds are probably maybe 1 in 8, 1 in 10. Well, that's pretty good odds based on sitting anywhere else in the woods. So I'll give it a shot. But if it's on a public land challenge, I might not do that because I got limited days. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to look at an aerial of that swamp, and I'm going to say, okay, that deer's living right there somewhere. He's not coming from miles. He was there in daylight right there. So he's living in that area. So what other bedding areas could he be in? Because I probably bumped him out of there. Maybe, maybe not. I still might think about where he's bedding in that spot. I might look at that and see how else he could come out of there without coming past that tree. Are there any other exits he could come out a different way and avoid that tree? And because every deer has a different temperament. And I've noticed some of the mature bucks are kind of hard to bump out of some of those areas because they know that's their safety net, that's the only place where that's the reason they survived all those years is because of that little spot they got. So I would try to find some other little way in or out of that, what I perceive was his bedding, and try and hunt him that way. I would study aerials and stuff and see what else in that swamp looks the same as that terrain wise, and try and hunt him there. I'd look for other signs of him around the property where he's coming in and out of that, probably concentrate on the same type of terrain as that marshy area. And, I would just hunt that area down and pound it.
But when I guess when is too much? You know what I'm saying? Like how much?
That deer is gonna live there no matter what. It's not like he's gonna hitchhike up to Wisconsin and hide on you. He's gonna stay there. So there is no too much. A lot of people are like, oh, I got to back off on this property. Well, you back off, and the next guy's going to go in there and kill it for you. What you have to do is just keep moving. For me, a lot of it's in stacking. So if I got a deer that's in a 100-acre area, and I hunt, and I perceive, okay, there's 12 spots he could be bedding in. And if I hunt those spots 12 days in a row, I would say after day 10, there's extremely high odds that buck's going to show up in one of the last 2 spots because I've been just narrowing it down. Now, every time he goes into one of those bedding areas, he smells my scent, knows what's there, and you keep stacking the what's left. You know what I mean? I mean, there's like take this for instance. There's an island that I hunt every now and then where after hunting it for a few years and running some cameras and stuff, I learned that 2 or 3 days after pheasant season starts, and pheasant hunters surround this swamp, that the hunting activity would get really, or the deer activity on that island would get really good, and there'd usually be something good would show up in daylight and bed there. Otherwise, they bed there all year, but it was kind of like hit or miss. You know, might be there a day or two, and then he's gone for 3 days, and then he's there a day or two. And if you hit it the wrong day, you'd burn the spot up. But I learned that hitting it 2 or 3 days after that pressure on the outside, not the same day, but 2 or 3 days later, after they've learned that that pressure is consistent on the outside, they'd end up on that island, you know, out in the water. So to mimic that, and hunt it at a different time, I started taking that perimeter of that, you know, walking through all the bedding areas and all the places that they'd be bedding on the transition line of that swamp, all the way around that island. And I'd do it 2 days in a row. And then the third day I'd go hunt the island, and I'd get the same kind of activity that I was getting from pheasant hunting. So you can pressurize deer into bedding in different areas. I mean, you can, when you hunt an area, he's not going to want to bed there again. So he's going to shift over to one of his other beds in his core area. And you just keep doing that, and you put that pressure in there, and that pressure actually makes the hunting better. As a matter of fact, a lot of these big bucks I do better when the pressure is high, when there's more people in the woods, when the parking lots are full. I laugh my ass off when I hear all these people say, well, I don't hunt there because there's 7 cars in the parking lot. If there's a big buck there, I don't care how many cars are in the parking lot. Those guys are putting pressure on that animal, and they're going to make it easier for me to use my methods and hunt them, because I'm going to figure out where people don't go. And that's the huge thing. Again, it goes back to those overlooked spots where nobody's going.
I had myself on mute. Yeah, that seems to be a common thread amongst a lot of guys like yourself that we have on here that are consistently killing good deer. It's just a matter of hunting where everybody else hitting. I mean, it sounds simple, so simple, but it's finding those spots and figuring it out. And like you said earlier, even knowing where a big buck is and getting them in front of you doesn't make him dead. There's a whole other part of it. You got to execute. So
right.
It's a whole process, but yeah, Dan, we've had you on here for well over an hour. Just kind of I'd like to get you, I guess, to wrap things up. What's your most memorable buck?
Geez, there's a lot of them. I guess the most memorable one would probably be my biggest scoring one, which was my 15 pointer that buck I hunted for 3 years, and he towards like the last 2 years of hunting him, I found where he was bedding in this spot in this old cow pasture that wasn't being used anymore. And everybody would go up this dirt road where there's fields on one side and just grass and some brush on the other side. It was the old cow pasture. And they'd walk right past it. And the buck bed was probably 75 or 100 yards off that dirt road. And a west wind would put them bedding there, but a west wind would have your wind from that dirt road going right to them. Now I would hunt further back and sit with binoculars, and I'd watch him get out of that bed and move, and there was not a tree around anywhere. It was just open pasture, and he was bedding under this big willow tree that was all by itself, and he had like a little cave under there where the tree, this huge limb of the tree, had eventually come down and just formed this open spot underneath, and he would sit in that open spot. And you could see him from a distance. And it was funny because I just constantly think about how can I get this deer, but it would be pitch black by the time he'd get away from there. It's just open grass, and you could see forever. And there's a very short window he moved in daylight. But he would get to that trail where the people walk by all the time and cross that into the crop fields. But there's no trees. So I was constantly trying to figure out how to kill that deer. And I remember one time I got up there and I went to where he crosses that road, and I stopped by his tracks. And the fence is down there, the barbed wire fence that was alongside of that dirt road in that field. And I walked like 10 steps down his trail towards his tree and just looked, and there's like nothing I could do. And I turned around, went back to the trail, and walked to the back. And I was in a position where I could see that spot again. And I watched. And sure enough, he got up. He came out like he did every day. But this time, when he got to my scent, because I had left that dirt road, he just freaked. Came unglued, took off running because I stepped 10 feet from that trail. which is a consistent that I see with these big bucks. Is they do, they'll tolerate you in a certain spot, but when you do something a little out of the norm, they freak. So I had this thing in my head thinking, well, he would only show up on a west wind, and I had that pretty determined. It had to be, west or northwest, but you get anything outside of that, he wouldn't be there. And I had picked up his shed in the spring, laying right in that bed, and he bed there all the time. The bed was just worn into the ground. So on Thanksgiving Day, I was watching weather, and we had this big celebration we were doing at my mom's house. And in the morning, I checked the weather, and it was a west wind, and it was going to switch, at like 10 in the morning or something to, it was just going to completely flip around. There's like a front coming in. And I was like, there's no way that deer is getting out of that bed and walking through that open terrain across country and bedding someplace else. He's going to be there. So I went out there, and I got to the point where that trail crossed that logging road, or that farmer access road. And there was a little patch of brush about 10 foot by 10 foot that blocked me from that deer. And it was kind of sparse. You maybe kind of picked me up through it. So I was a little leery of it, but I took my shotgun and I bungeed it to my back, and I crawled to that brush. And this is in November, and it was pretty cold out, and there was water in there, and there's ice in it. And I was cracking ice and stuff and trying to break it real quietly as I crawled. And I crawled up to those little cattails and brush. And I figured I was probably within 20 yards of the bed. And I got the gun off my back, and I popped up onto my knees and then to my feet. And here's that buck at 20 yards in its bed with its big eyes staring at me, and I shot it right in its bed. And what really, I remember the thing that really overtook me was I could have did that with a bow. I just never had the balls, because he was laying right there. I mean, I had all the time in the world to draw a bow, but that's probably my most memorable hunt, even though it's not a bow hunt.
Oh man. Yeah, I can see why. That's awesome. Well, Dan, man, I can't thank you enough for your time, taking time out of your evening here to talk deer hunting with us. I thoroughly enjoyed it, learned a lot, and I just hope you have a great 2022, 2023 deer season.
I'm planning on it. I'm hoping to knock down another giant.
For those who want to keep up with you or what you're doing and how your season goes, what's the best way for them to do that?
Well, there's a few different outlets. Now the biggest thing is my YouTube page. I'm constantly putting updates of what's going on. I film all my hunts. So you see what's going on day to day. And that's, I think those are really good educational videos. Other than that, I'm active on Facebook. I have a website, thehuntandbeast.com. That's a forum based. It's like Facebook, but completely free speech.
There you go.
But YouTube, Facebook, my website, all the normal things. If you just punch Dan Infalt into your Google engine, you'll find a million things with me, whether it's podcasts or videos or whatever. I think the videos are really good. There's some really good hunts on video. That one that you were talking about earlier, the buck that I shot last year in the cattails, that was filmed real well.
Yes, it was.
Yeah. We'll be sure to put links to your YouTube channel and everything in the show notes, so people can find that and check out your videos and kind of follow along and see how your season goes this year.
Yeah.
All right, Dan. Well, again, I appreciate it and enjoyed it.
Yeah, well, send me a link when you make it live.
Oh yeah. Yep. Absolutely. We will.